try it again then. Hello? You hear me now? Do you hear me now? I've I've been here and been talking, and I'm not sure what happened there. But I'm glad. We're back? Okay. We'll start over. It's April 15th. You got about 10 hours to get your taxes in. But that's not the big news today. It's, of course, this historic day, the first trial of an American president. um, and he went into the court and said that the trial was an assault on America. Um, you know, this is likely to be the only trial that finishes up before Americans go to the polls in November. And the thing about this one is, God forbid, if Donald Trump were to win the election, this is the trial that he could not pardon himself. It isn't a federal trial. And consequently, he would have, even as president, no standing. Although, as a dictator, which is what he intends to be, I suspect that those arcane ideas of, well, it's a straight trial as opposed to a federal trial and you have no standing, sir, wouldn't necessarily apply if whatever he wants to do, he's going to do. So the trial will go on for some day, every day of the week, but Wednesday. Why they do that, I don't know. And I will just see. The scary part for me is that the main witness is somebody who's already perjured himself, of course, for Donald Trump, but and that would be, of course, Michael Cohen. But I came upon a pretty interesting and cogent explanation for people who say this is, it's too bad that this is the trial that's gone forward, because it's just about, him having sex. And then, of course, as many people would do, paying off the woman to shut up about it. But here's the thing. The thing to keep in mind is that the money that Trump gave through Michael Cohen was to protect his campaign for the presidency. It wasn't to protect his marriage. It wasn't to protect him, from embarrassment. First of all, as we know, he is unembarrassable. That's not what the purpose was. The purpose was to help Donald Trump become president of the United States, which he did. If, in fact, the sole purpose of him making those payments had been to hide a personal sexual affair, it would not have been criminal. The criminality comes because the intent was to interfere in an election. He violated campaign finance laws and he deprive voters of information that might have affected their votes, and then he sought to cover it up with false entries in business records. Now, every time the media refers to this as a trial about a sex scandal, the media is playing right into Trump's hands. It is not. It is about attempting to affect the result of the presidential election. And the good stuff ain't going to happen for a few weeks. But as I said, I don't think you were here when I said it. The jury selection going on now is the most important thing, really, for both sides. Because while it's believed that Alvin Bragg has a slam dunk case here in many ways, all Trump's team needs is one juror. That's the way the system works. He needs one juror. And he does not have a fumbling attorney in this case. The attorney is somebody who knows what he's doing, Todd Blanche, and apparently he has told sources that he feels that he can, in fact, win this. So, I don't know. I don't know, guys. We will be riveted. It's too bad there's not cameras in the court. I think the chance that Donald Trump, as a defendant in a courtroom where he has little power, if any, the judge has all the power in those walls. I doubt that he will be able to restrain himself, especially when he has to sit there and listen as Michael Cohen tells the truth. And Stormy Daniels tells the truth. It'll be interesting and consequential. But at the moment, there's nothing to see. Right. So it was a big weekend. They're all big weekends now. Every time I say goodbye to you on a Thursday, I cannot ever imagine what's going to be happening on by the time I talk to you again on Monday. Israel was attacked by Iran and obviously successfully defended itself. But if you want to look at, we often, as I often say, you can't see the forest for the trees when you're living history. But in this case, you pretty much can, because right now we are at a point where the shadow war and proxy war between these two countries, Iran and Israel, which has been going on for years and years and years, has come out into the open. And this is the kind of thing that, should it escalate, can lead to world war. So if you're looking for something to be terrified by, I would suggest looking that direction. there's true anybody who knows history knows how important this moment is, and what an unfortunate thing it is that Israel is led by Bibi Netanyahu right now, a man who does not, like Trump, seem capable of restraint, because restraint is what Israel needs now, not escalation. Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. That's about all we can do, really. You know, I saw a movie this weekend that was the most terrifying movie I've ever seen. I don't like scary movies. This is the movie called Civil War, and I do recommend it highly. It is unsettling. It is one of those movies that you walk out of and you don't want to speak. You have nothing to say. It is so chilling because it is war. I mean, we've all seen war movies. This is a war movie, but it's happening on our streets, in our cities, our towns, small towns, big towns. Washington, D.C., Charlottesville, interestingly enough. And you never quite know, of all the people who are shooting here and shooting there, who they are. One thing you do know, they're Americans, and they're killing other Americans. And at a time in our nation's history when we have never seen the level of vitriol between Americans and calls for violence by Americans and an attempted insurrection by an American president, this movie is way too close to our reality. And I think why it's important to see is it can happen here. There is nothing, and I think we've learned this. I hope we've learned this. There is nothing exceptional about the human beings that comprise this nation. Nothing different than the people who are part of other nations that have warred. In fact, we certainly have before, and against each other before. We already hear, in our own time, hear people calling for secession or a national divorce, and the fact that the polls show that incredibly, disturbingly is probably the right word, large numbers of our fellow countrymen and women do believe that violence might be necessary to achieve their political goals. The defendant in the courtroom in New York City today believes that, as do many of his followers. And so that movie is is showing where that kind of where it can lead. As I said, you're never quite sure who's killing who. It doesn't matter. It just forces you to look at what it could lead to. It's why it is so unsettling. Uh, I can't. I'm not gonna. Uh, I don't want to ruin it for you, but it. I think there's enough hints in it as to what has happened. In that the president of the United States, who you see at the very beginning and at the very end, uh, appears to be a Trumpian figure, I think. And we are told he is in his third term, which, of course, by law is not allowed. So you get the sense that that has maybe what has set off. You know that he has dissolved the FBI. And it is chilling. Absolutely chilling. Pittsburgh has a little part. It centers on these journalists who are in New York City, which is devastated, and trying to get to DC because it appears that the insurgents are going to win. The problem is getting there. And the only way they figure they have a shot is by going through Pittsburgh, from New York to Pittsburgh, down into West Virginia, and heading on from there. In fact, at one point they go under a bridge which has written on the side in like graffiti, "Go Steelers." It's all so close. It is chilling, just incredibly chilling. Did you see? Well, we saw Trump earlier today, but yesterday I guess he was in Pennsylvania. Did you see him ranting about Gettysburg? It is in literally incomprehensible. It's word salad. Although he does start talking about Robert E. Lee, and he says something to the effect of Robert E. Lee is he's no longer in favor, he tells the crowd. Did you notice that? He's no longer in favor. The crowd's not happy about that. And you think, what American president? Well, this American president who calls our current insurrectionists hostages, and he doesn't understand that Robert E. Lee is not in favor anymore because in our last Civil War, he made war on the United States of America. So I want to talk about one of the things that we've learned in these last few years that we'd rather not have learned, and that is that our fellow men and women are often extremely disappointing, and that the men and women who are in positions of power often disappoint and let us down because of their avarice or their timidity or their total lack of character and sense of honor. And I don't watch those Sunday morning shows, but there was, I see, an incredible exchange between George Stephanopoulos and Sununu, the governor of New Hampshire, right? I mean, who had endorsed Nikki Haley when there was a primary race still going on, but that when Haley dropped out, then went on to endorse Donald Trump. And Stephanopoulos asked him this: just to sum up, you support Trump for president even if he's convicted in the classified documents case. Obviously, these are from questions that he's asked before. You support him for president even though you believe he contributed to an insurrection. You support him for president even though you believe he's lying about the last election. You support him for president even if he's convicted in the Manhattan case. I just want to say the answer to that is yes, correct? And Sununu answers, yeah. Me and 51% of America. Now, needless to say, Donald Trump has never attracted 51% of Americans. So therein, when you go all in for Donald Trump, you have to be able to lie through your teeth. This willingness on the part of so many to abandon even and to do it unabashedly, abandon principle for power, abandon principle for political gain at such a consequential time. It is terrifying to me. And what adds to my sense of terror is our media, our social media more than media in general, but our social media. I saw a term I'd never heard before, conflict entrepreneurs. You know, that is what a lot of young people now, I suspect, aspire to be because there's so much money in it. It's about getting clicks, getting views, and becoming consequential. Being a celebrity, having followers is the most important thing. And what we've learned, again, in these last few years, is that you attract people by being outrageous. You attract people by creating conflict. This is the Trumpian model. And so there's a term, conflict entrepreneurs. The New York Times had a piece on one of them. Why they do a piece on this despicable human being is beyond me, because it's feeding everything this empty suit wants. I'm not even going to tell you his name. I don't care. He's a young man. He had been kicked off of all of the usual sites for being, and it takes something to get kicked off, for being so outrageous. But Elon Musk breathed life back into him by, of course, letting him go rant away on what used to be Twitter. And after the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel, this guy went to work. And I'm looking at a graph of what happened to his, how many followers. He went from not even having a million to like off the charts, because he was saying outrageous things. He is a merchant of rage. You harness rage and anger like Trump, and you get rich and you get influential. He's quoted in this article as saying about October 7, when all those innocent people were slaughtered, he said, "It was a godsend for me. I was very fortunate." What kind of a human being would say that? And he is what is called an influencer. So the influencers that get such huge audiences now are the ones that are trafficking in rage, conflict, division. You think Mahatma Gandhi would have many followers now in this? I'm serious. Nelson Mandela. The stuff they said, that's not stuff that gets clicks. That's not stuff that gets followers. No. And this is a young man. I think he might even still be in his 20s. And they talk about, what's interesting, because this is what social media has done to us. He always wanted attention and power. He grew up in San Clemente, California. And he was a lefty. Teen Vogue recognized him as a top young environmentalist. Reader's Digest included him on a list of inspirational children. At his high school graduation, he knelt and that was 2018, so there you see how young he is. At his high school graduation in 2018, he knelt during the national anthem to protest police brutality. And now That's just not where the clicks are. He supported Bernie Sanders. But now he's all in for Donald Trump because he realized that Trump had the recipe. It is so unbelievable. Uh, it's just so unbelievably divorced from any sense of wanting to make things better. I, I'm just blown away. But this is what our technology, our social media, which is so powerful, what it rewards. It rewards this SOB. He's got a Putin refrigerator magnet. He's interesting in that he says he's very anti-Israel, which you'd think, well, that's maybe on the left. No, he's pro-Palestinian, but he's pro-Russian. He is anti-woke. He is anti-monopoly. He is pro-gun. He is pro-fossil fuel. He has figured out whatever it is to get the most attention. Do you remember? I'm trying to think. You remember Joey Buttafuoco? When was that? He was some nobody who was having an affair with some young woman who then killed Buttafuoco's wife, right? Is that what happened? But he was a nobody. But it became tabloid fodder, and he became famous, and I think she became famous, and that is when I started to see that, oh my God, what we've become in this country is we worship people who have fame, who gain attention. It doesn't matter whether they're, well, the term infamous sort of ceases to have any meaning because it's okay, like if you're Joey Buttafuoco and you're infamous, or if you're famous for, like, being Nelson Mandela. It's all the same. Amazing. Just amazing. I have a caller. Let me see what's here. Hello?
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
I've been listening, and I guess I just don't understand why we're wasting all our time talking about these Trump trials. And I think we should be talking about the election in 10 days between Summer Lee and Bhavani Patel. Because this could change the entire direction of our country after those airstrikes against Israel over the weekend. And then we have the kids down at Pitt celebrating on our campus. Patel came out and condemned that. Summer Lee is silent. And then we have Fetterman. He goes on the State of the Union and condemns Iran, but doesn't endorse Patel. And I'm not claiming I'm the smartest person on foreign affairs, but I know enough to understand if Summer Lee wins, that only is going to help Trump. It's, the independents who are going to decide this election, and they are sick of the wingnut jobs like Summer Lee who are going to vote for Trump to try to neutralize this woke pro-Hamas river to the sea people like Bethany Hallam and Summer Lee. This race is, is all we should be talking about. I mean, AIPAC came out. They're a political action group. You know, they have not endorsed Patel. They spent $4 million to, you know, try to take out Summer Lee back in, 2016 or whenever it was.
2 years ago.
And they're staying out of this election 2 years ago. I mean, they're staying out of this election, and I just don't understand why. You know, we're not talking about what's going on here, or nobody is reporting on what is going on, you know, with these Pitt students and this election that's coming up, you know, and, you know, I don't understand.
First of all, I don't understand some of what you're saying. Why are you saying that this is one congressional race, a primary? Why
Yes,
is
but
it?
I understand, but this is going to change the entire direction of our country.
How can this race change the entire direction of our country?
Because it's important that
I know
we get the right people in office.
Well,
and that's what's going on right now. These Trump trials, this is going to be going on for months and months and months, and all this stuff. I mean, this is what's going on today, what's going on right now, and what is important right now, what's going on right now in our like in our state, what's going on.
Yeah. Well, listen, it is very hard to knock off a incumbent in a primary. We don't often see people being primaried, as that's the verb that's come around here. You know, for a Democrat to try to knock off another Democrat. I do think, though, that in this particular instance, both of these candidates represent two disparate visions of the Democratic Party. Patel being the more moderate, and Lee obviously desiring to be part of, she wants to be, and is, I suspect, in the squad, which is the leftist part of the Democratic Party. I think my sense is Lee is too left for this to truly represent this district. But the voters will decide. I disagree with you that people aren't. There have been a number of debates. There have been things written and endorsements made.
I understand. I'm just saying, I think we're giving Lee a cakewalk. I mean, this is what we should be trying to do is to knock her out.
Well, I think people in their own ways,
you know, and providing the facts. I mean, she's walking around with a Palestinian robe on. I mean, it's disgraceful. She's a whack job.
No, well, I don't think she's a whack job. She has a different point of view. She's this left, you know, the lefties, a la Summer Lee and some of the others, have turned me off in many ways. And I do think,
Same.
I do think that they, while they excite the young, some of us old liberal types are put off by some of what they're up to, especially in this regard. And I, as a Jew, have found Summer Lee to not be in any way sympathetic to my perspective of this extremely complicated story. It is not a black and white thing. It is complex as all hell, and she's part of the crowd and leading part of the crowd to make it seem simple that the Israelis are these colonialists and these genocidal maniacs and all of this. So for all of those reasons, I've already voted. And while I voted for her 2 years ago, I did not vote for Lee this time. She lost me because
Okay.
I vote for people
Good.
who represent me. She's just gone off
Hmm.
too far off the beaten path for me, not for others. But,
Hmm.
and Patel, I'm assuming, is going to still vote. I mean, I'm willing to bet that those two women would vote the same on 98% of votes. So I don't think I'm going to be losing anything by voting for Patel, except I just don't want this sort of firebrand and anti Israel, which gets and has become very close to anti Jew representative. I don't want her. So
Hmm.
that's one voter. Now, I
Yeah.
don't feel that comfortable. I've said that. I mentioned it before, um, but I don't know. I've not seen polling. I don't know what people are expecting.
I understand. I understand. I guess I'm just. I guess I'm just a little lost. That why Fetterman hasn't induced Patel. Why people. The Jewish community. They're not coming out and endorsing her. And whatever, because when I saw the picture of Summer Lee in that Palestinian robe, I feel like that should have been all over the media. And, people should be seeing this is who you'd be voting for. This, if you're not informed and we're not talking about this and we're not endorsing it and we're not putting it out there, we're not reporting about what's going on, people don't know. And then they just go out and vote, but they don't know all the facts.
Well, I
And
must
that's why
say,
I
I
feel
did
like
not.
it's very important.
Okay. The one thing you're telling
Why
me.
doesn't the governor, the governor, why hasn't our governor endorsed
Well,
Patel?
I think because they don't. The Democratic Party is in. You don't want these divisions to affect our ability to hang together in the general election. That's my
We're not.
guess.
I think there's. I don't know if I agree with that. The division here is not saying what's really, not coming out and saying what's going on. That is where we've become divided.
Well, I have to
And
also
not,
say that I'm surprised that Fetterman, given his incredible, unwavering support of Israel, um,
exactly.
I'm a little astonished that he's made no endorsement. I would guess he has.
Absolutely none. No,
Okay.
he was on
Well,
State
then
of the
that's
Union
okay.
and nothing.
Okay. Well, look, listen. I don't know. The proof will be in the pudding. Um, if the election were held in my neighborhood, it'd be a landslide for Patel. I mean, there are no Summer Lee signs, one or two, and tons of Patel signs, but that's because this is a Jewish area. I'm in the East End. We'll see.
Hmm.
Jews do vote, but we're
All right.
not a huge block. We
Yes.
do vote, and it is a primary, which is often a low turnout. So I would imagine that a lot of people are on the ground getting their voters out. And Summer Lee has been very smart about that in the past, but I don't know. I have not a clue how this one's going to come down. But I told you how I voted.
Well, okay. Well, I just hope, if Summer Lee gets in, I hope they don't cry when Trump wins.
Okay. I don't necessarily see that
Uh-huh.
connection. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye bye. I appreciate it. Bye bye.
Mhm. Yeah. Bye bye.
Um, I, I, whatever. Um, okay. Well, that was unexpected. Um, trying to. Oh, can I can I treat you to something that I saw just to take some of the heat out of the room for a sec? Um, Okay, sorry. This is what happens. See, unfortunately, now that I'm running it, I have to stop explaining this to you, but these silences are me trying to take in uh, emails and chats and phone calls. There was uh, a very interesting piece. Um, I guess this was the New York Times too, um, about George Romero and his second film being Dawn of the Dead. And it turns out that Dawn of the Dead premiered 45 years ago. That was when it was released in this country. And the Times did a piece because apparently this is just a cult classic. More so than the first one. This is the one that everybody goes nuts about. Not that I ever went nuts at any of them, but Dawn of the Dead. Um, there's a lot of screenings at theaters all around the country. And according to the Times, it remains one of the most influential and profitable horror films of all time. And that if you wonder about where all the zombies came from, it was this. And the fact that George Romero was one of us, a Pittsburgh guy, who, made his first film, Night of the Living Dead, on a shoestring budget with a lot of folks, just who he knew in town. And he supported himself by doing commercials and industrial films and stuff. It's how he was able to make that film. And then after that film had some notoriety, he got sort of freaked out about being a horror film director. He didn't want to get stuck in that genre. But he said eventually he got more comfortable with the idea, and he started in his head, there was percolating this idea for a second one. And it was an Italian filmmaker who Romero shared the script with, who is responsible for it getting made, in that he said, I was such a fan of Night of the Living Dead, and I'll give you half the budget for this movie, this next one, up front. You can come up with just half of it, but I get the foreign rights. It was a great deal that guy made, because it turned out that, first of all, he had the largest budget he'd ever had to work with. He also was friends with a guy named Mark Mason, who was one of the owners of the Monroeville Mall, which was at the time, and this is so, when you see it now, this hollowed out shell. The Monroeville Mall, when this movie was made, was one of the largest shopping centers in the country. And Romero worked out a deal with the mall that he could film overnight when the mall was closed. He could start at 11 p.m. and he had to stop when the walkers and the cleaning crew arrived at 7. So he had those 8 hours every night. And he and Tom Savini went to town, and the fact is there were, Savini was in Vietnam. He was a combat photographer in Vietnam, which is interesting because the movie I was telling you about, the Civil War, is also centers on combat photographers, people who see what war really does, and they see it with an unblinking eye. And they do it in hopes that that might make war less likely. Clearly, that has not proved to be the case. But there was so much bloodshed in this Monroeville Mall take that the Motion Picture Association gave it an X rating. I don't know if you know that. That's a kiss of death. With an X rating, you can't get, theaters won't show it. Regular theater chains won't show it. And Romero, in a interview he did, had said that, we couldn't get any U.S. distribution. We had automatic European distribution, but he couldn't get it here. And so they rented a theater in New York City. This is the 45 years ago. Took out an ad in the paper and said, we're showing this. And the audience came, and the audience went nuts. And that's all United Artists had to see. They picked it up. And it became one of that year's runaway commercial hits, worldwide grosses of $55 million. Roger Ebert called it one of the best horror films ever made. So it's 45 years ago today that he released that on his own in New York City. And the rest is history. Zombies at the Mall. And it's often said to be an anti-consumerist, anti-capitalist film, which is how it still resonates with people. Because it's a satire in some ways. People see it as a satire on consumerism with the zombies, mindlessly shuffling through the mall and up and down the escalators, which is sort of, how a lot of us go to the mall as well. I want to point out the passing of Robert MacNeil from the MacNeil Era Report. He made a point of being boring doing the news. He's quoted in the obit as saying, I cannot stand the theatrical prosecutorial interview, the interview that's designed to draw attention to the interviewer. Well, isn't that interesting? And it's a good thing he's dead because, sorry, that's what won. Calling attention. And this quiet way of eliciting information that MacNeil was famous for is so old-fashioned and it's just out of fashion, right? Out of fashion. He also said he said this in later years, television has changed journalism utterly, not just for television, but for print and everybody else. It's changed the whole culture and ethos of journalism. And to have been able to hold the line against that tide that's going to engulf us all in the end has been a source of gratification to me. So he knew he'd lost the fight. He saw television corrupting as a corrupting influence. But technology and social media have taken that and run with it, as I was suggesting. An interesting little tidbit that I want to share with you about it was MacNeil was working for CBS in 1963 and was part of their contingent of journalists who was covering the trip of President Kennedy to Dallas. And after the shots were fired, MacNeil was right there. After the shots were fired, he ran to the nearest building, which happened to be the Texas School Book Depository. And he asked a man who was leaving the building, and he asked two men, one leaving, one in the lobby, where the nearest telephone was. And Lee Harvey Oswald later, before he was killed, told the Dallas police that he had encountered a Secret Service agent as he was leaving the building. Now, the sense is that was not a Secret Service agent, that was Robert MacNeil, and he bumped into Lee Harvey Oswald. William Manchester, the historian, felt that there was, in fact, no doubt that that was MacNeil. MacNeil, being this very careful journalist, has never said that it was Lee Harvey Oswald he bumped into, because it is possible, he said, but I have no way of confirming that either of those young men I spoke to was Oswald. So ever the careful journalist, and a different time. Today, anybody who'd bumped into Lee Harvey Oswald on the way would be a celebrity. You'd be all over the front pages. You would be huge. Clicks, 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 clicks. Whoa. Okay, guys, I think that's it. We done did it. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you or talk at you or with you tomorrow when my sister joins us. Thank you all very much. I'm appreciative.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.